Hello there everyone and welcome. My name is Waffles the Asian Yanbear and today we are talking about Green Yellow Yamato. I have been playing a ton of Green Yellow Yamato ever since the starter deck came out, and I've been trying a bunch of different combinations, and I feel like I finally found a pretty darn good list and I feel very comfortable with the deck, so we're going to be talking about that today. Now, I have gotten to 30 ranked games with, I believe, about a 66% win rate. I'll have the actual one on screen here. So I am by no means the best Yamato player, but I am at least competent, and hopefully competent is good enough to give you a decent overview. So Yamato has an aggro beatdown playstyle. Basically, what that means is you're going to like playing this leader if you like to attack your opponent a lot. Basically, you're going to start off with an 8k swing, double attack, force your opponent on the back foot early, and then you're going to have a bunch of smaller characters with finally one way to go for lethal with something like Hody Jones, maybe Zoro, or maybe even Shanks to just try to have some big bodies on the board as well. So basically, if you like to attack your opponent, if you like to say 8k leader swing, 9k leader swing, this is the deck for you. This deck is pretty easy to play. I would say it's not like super simple like some of the decks I've covered before. Like Red Purple Luffy I felt was like the easiest deck in the game. But I think Yamato is, if you are somewhat aware of your deck, if you know a little bit about how to calculate lethal, I think that Yamato can be a pretty easy deck. So I would put it between easy to medium. As far as the tiering goes, it is not the best deck in the game, but it is a solid option. If we say tier 1 is Blue Purple Luffy, then tier 2 would be where Yamato sits, I think. I like Yamato a lot because he provides pressure immediately. Like I said, that 8k leader swing is going to put your opponent on the back foot very early. You have many characters that are playable off your trigger, so as soon as you get your opponent down to 3 life, which usually they're going to take that hit for the 8k leader swing and go down to 3 life if they are a 5 life leader, or if they counter out, they lose like 2 different cards in their hand. So usually they like to take it, but that means all of your characters are now playable off trigger. So you have a ton of these bodies that just can be played as soon as you take them from life. And I think outside of probably Secret Rare Zoro, which you can actually replace, this should be a pretty cheap deck to build, because a lot of that is going to just come from the starter deck. So if you're a little bit like low on budget, sorry, there's a train, I hope you guys can't hear it, but if you are low on budget, I think that Yamato is a good deck to build. As far as weaknesses go, I found that Yamato struggles against decks that can have consistent removal and put out a blocker at the same time, so mainly Lucci, or fast leaders that buff their base power. So Purple Black Luffy is able to get that, I think they call it Beer Luffy, but the 6C Luffy out pretty quickly, and they are very aggressive early, just like we are. So it kind of is a tough situation where when you have something like, let's say, a 6k leader like Blue Purple Luffy, because he kind of takes a little bit to build up or to get ready to actually go, you can push with your aggro, push with your aggressiveness, and kind of get into the right situation. But with Purple Black Luffy, I found that it is a little bit more difficult, specifically because they are very fast about it. I do feel that Yamato is also very dependent on getting that early momentum, so if your opponent happens to draw a really good hand, or they're able to get out a quick blocker, and then you're not really able to take life within the first couple turns, or make them discard within the first couple turns, I find that that can be a bit of a struggle. So that's where I would say Yamato is a little bit weak, but I think overall, Yamato does pretty well into a lot of the popular decks right now. As far as the core cards go, obviously we are running the 1C Yamato. It is a searcher for almost the entire deck. It is able to go up to 5k with 2 Dawn, so basically as soon as you are able to activate your leader ability, you can give him 2 Dawn, put him at a 5k, and then just go for a poke. Either have your opponent take a life, which isn't usually what they'll do, or just make them discard 1 card. It's really easy. It's going to basically die the next turn, but you're mainly just looking to have a searcher and that has a little bit of utility. You could run Momonosuke, but I found that Momonosuke has kind of the same problem as Yamato. He's gonna die pretty quickly afterwards, and since Momonosuke goes for 2 Dawn instead of just the 1 Dawn, and also can't be aggressive, I found that he was not as helpful. And we are also not going to be running Otama because we are not running many green cards, especially I don't think we're running any green Wano card. No, we are running Izo, but I don't think Otama was really the right card for this deck because you're really relying a lot more on the yellow Wano cards. Obviously, we also want to run Izo. Izo is basically just Onami, but only for the leader, and it can be a blocker. We are not going to be running Onami because I do feel that Izo is a little bit of a better upgrade. But of course, you can run Onami as well if you prefer, and Onami will allow you to make your characters have banish. But really, we want the leader to have banish a lot of the time, so I feel that Izo is generally pretty good. Because when you then add those two on with leader ability, he becomes a blocker. He's also searchable, obviously, he's Wano. And so we are running 4 copies. So, cheap blocker and gives yourself banish. It's really nice. We also have this one right here, which actually I did not originally start using. Ashura Doji, when I read him, seemed like kind of a bad card, at least compared to some of the other ones. But I found that he's actually kind of amazing. Basically, early on, he's going to function as KO removal to keep your opponent on the back foot. So basically, if you have a 5-life leader, let's say you're facing a Buggy, right, you're going to be able to attack into them. They'll probably take 2 life, they'll still be at 3. And then they play one of their characters, usually it's going to be like the 4-cost ones from the starter deck. Then you just Ashura Doji, it's dead, then Buggy still needs to take a lot more time to actually build up his board. I also find that if you grab him with Yamato, you then incentivize the opponent to take life if it's, for example, a 4-life leader. So I can go, okay, Yamato, turn 1, grab Ashura Doji, then go 8k swing with Yamato against, let's say, blue-purple Luffy. Actually, that's a bad example. Sorry. Let's choose a different 4-life leader, whatever. If they see that you grabbed Ashura Doji, they're usually going to want to take the life so that they can turn off Ashura Doji. This is why we're running 3 copies, not 4. But since he is searchable and he is a 1k counter, he is still going to have some use after the early game. But most of the time, a lot of what we're trying to do is get ahead of the game early. Right. We're not so focused on the late game here because we don't want our opponents to get to the late game. Or if they do, they should be very behind. So this Kikunojo, amazing. Kikunojo, one of the best Wano cards. 6k body off the trigger. As long as your opponent has 3 life, you just immediately play Kikunojo. If she gets KO'd, you get an extra life. Freaking awesome. And so that's going to help a lot versus removal decks. Because basically, Yamato, like I said, struggles a little bit against consistent removal. But if you have ones that are a little bit, let's say, disincentivized from KO and Kikunojo, that's pretty good. And of course, 4 copies, because again, she's very, very good. We have Blocker Momonosuke, and I saw a few people not running Blocker Momonosuke, but I actually find that he is very helpful. Basically, you pop down the Blocker Momonosuke, whatever trigger body you have on the board after you've attacked with them, you can then just put it right back on your life. Protects it from KO removal. It protects it from being attacked by when it's rested, right? Your opponent could attack into some of your characters, but mainly it's just giving you an extra life. Basically, because we have this Blocker Momonosuke, we are able to take life a little bit more recklessly early. For example, let's say you have the counter to be able to deal with something. You can still just take the life and go, oh, trigger body, boom, it's on the board. Or if I already have something like, let's say, Searcher Yamato, I've got Izo. Let's say I have something else. Ashura Doji, fine, we'll just go with that because that's one I already talked about. It's hard to do this live, but it's going to make it a lot faster for me to actually get this video out. Anyway, so let's say we have that on the board. We've attacked with it. And then obviously it's probably going to die the next turn. So instead, we could just go Momonosuke, Ashura Doji back into life. Now I'm right back up. So that's awesome. I'll be able to take more damage early on. Will be less pressure on our end, right? Again, this is all going to be about trying to have enough momentum in the game. Yamato is really great about keeping the momentum in your favor. So we are going to be running 4 copies, and of course, he's another blocker, so that can be kind of helpful, but mainly he's there for the healing. Other Momonosuke, the newer one, is fantastic. I'm sure you were expecting this one. He's another core card. He is going to buff our leader to a 6k leader at 2 life. So as long as you have 2 life or less, you are able to buff your leader up to 6k. So that just saves you a Dawn. It's pretty cool later on. But the big deal that we have here is that if you return 2 attached Dawn, it does not have to be active Dawn. to attach Dawn to your rested Dawn area. Then he gives himself Rush and 1k. So basically what you end up doing is you can attack 7k with Yamato if you want, or more likely, you're going to play him, then you're going to go, let's say, I don't know, 8k Yamato, right? Or you go, what, 6k, 7k Yamato with 1 Dawn, put 2 Dawn on one of your other characters, attack with that, then use Momonosuke's effect to drop those 2 attached because your character's already attacked, you've already gotten the value out of that Dawn, and then boom, Momonosuke is now an 8k attacker with Rush. It's awesome. And the cool thing about this is, even if it's not his first turn being played, you can still use that effect, which means every turn, every time that you are going to attack, you can make him 8k. It's amazing. So very, very good. We want him at 4 copies. For this one, Hody Jones. If you've seen my videos before, you know I don't really like Hody Jones. However, in a deck like this, he is perfect. Basically, what we are going to struggle with late game is getting lethal against a deck with a lot of blockers. However, right, we have great control over our opponent's hand resources. Right, with all of the double attacks and things like that, we can really manipulate our opponent into discarding and countering out. But that means that they're going to rely on their blockers. Hody Jones, then when we want to go for lethal, we just play him down, rest 2 of their blockers, and then boom, you've got game. This also really helps against all the purple Luffys since you can shut down their Dawn too. You can get rid of any of the Gum Gum Giants. I keep saying Gum Gum Gavel in my free time, but it's Gum Gum Giant, triple G's. But we run 2 copies because while he's very, very good, you only need 1 to win the game. Right, so you are only really going to play him when you're going for lethal. There are very few times when you would play him otherwise. You have to be in a really good position, like a win more position, for you to play him other than going for lethal. So that's why we have 2 copies. You should be fine otherwise. Now, when we come to good cards, these are cards that I think aren't necessary ones that you need to include, but I find that they are still very good and I would recommend them. So these are slots you can change if you prefer, but I'm going to tell you why I like these cards quite a lot. So first we have Hiyori, right? Hiyori is a 2k counter, Wano, searchable, great. However, one thing I find that she's great about, and one reason I love her in lots of different decks, is you can just play her, get your life knowledge. If it's a good card, you can just put it back, or you can put one of your Wano triggers on there. However, that's obvious. What's less obvious is that she is fantastic with blocker Momonosuke. What you end up doing with this, you go 2 Dawn, Hiyori, put whatever you want into your life. Cool. Now you've got 2 Dawn you can use for your leader ability, so you can put that onto whatever other character you've got out on the board. Then you attack, 5 Dawn, Momonosuke, put Hiyori back onto your life. Now you can use her as a 2k counter again because now she's going to end up back in your hand. So basically, even though normally on play 2k counters are not super great when you have to play them because it's going to, make it so you don't have a 2k counter. If you then pair her with Momonosuke, you just get her back. So it's amazing. It's basically just you want 2 Dawn to be used for your leader ability. If you don't have anything else, I find that she is great. So we're running 3 copies. You don't need 4, but 3 is fine. Of course, we are running Izo, the OP11. He is another 2k counter. He's going to sometimes rest important cards. 4C or less is not usually going to be that important, and typically, if we're going for lethal, we're usually looking at something like Hody Jones for resting those, but occasionally he can be useful that way. We're mainly just going to be using him as a 2k counter. However, we're running 4 copies. One thing I could say here is you could switch him for a Hiyori copy instead if you'd like. You could go 4 Hiyoris, 3 Izo. And honestly, looking at that right now, I might end up doing that since I do find that Hiyori tends to be a little bit more helpful, very marginally, a little bit more helpful. For this one, this is a 2k counter, 5k body off trigger. So this is the Kinemon, right? This is from the starter deck. You want 4 copies. He is one of your best 2k counters. Basically, what's going to end up happening with that, right? You get attacked, you just plop Kinemon. Cool, right? or you've got a 2k counter in your hand. Really, it's a pretty simple card, but it just works with how you want your deck to work. Typically, you are not going to be using this trigger if your opponent has a buffed up leader, for example, a 6k leader, and they don't have anything on board you want to attack. Sometimes it is better to keep him as a 2k counter, so don't just automatically play him, but, you know, he can be very helpful. Here we have another 5k body off trigger. This is going to be the Neko Mamushi. I kind of like him because basically when you trigger him, you play him, you can use him to take out weaker support characters. For example, if you're taking on blue, yellow Nami, she's going to often run that Marshall D Teach, and that Teach is never going to attack you, so it's never going to be rested. However, right, he can attack active characters. Just give him that 2 Dawn, Teach is gone, now they can't use that ability anymore. So really, he's not going to be super necessary, but the times when he does come in handy, he really comes in handy. Most of the time, he's just going to be another 5k body that you can play off trigger. Same thing as what I talked about with Kinemon here. You're not always going to want to trigger that. Sometimes you are going to want to keep him for counter. However, being a 1k counter does mean more often than not you want to trigger him instead. Right here, this is You're the One Who Should Disappear. We have a lot of cards with no counter. It kind of just makes sense. It was either this or the One Who Wins Will Be Justice, I think is the English name, the Don Quixote one. But basically, makes the most sense. Sometimes, very rarely, you're going to get a game-winning trigger off of it. It's not like a Now or like Katakuri where you can really manipulate your life that way, but you can get a game-winning trigger with that. And he does pair with Hiyori if you are down to 1 life. So basically, if you're down to 1 life, Hiyori, put that in your life. Now you've got almost a game-winning trigger. It'll put you at least at 2 life, even though your opponent doesn't know that. It's kind of nice. So 4 copies just makes the most sense. Normally, you're going to be just using it as counter. Now, when we get to the tech cards, these are the cards that I feel are generally pretty helpful, but are not super necessary. I could see people taking them out, especially depending on the local meta. So first, we've got, what is this called? It's Gatling something. Hold on. All right, I got it. It's Gum Elephant Gatling. I really should have put the names and not the card code, but I figured, oh, maybe I'm putting Japanese images on screen. I don't know. I'm doing this in post. But yeah, OP11 033. This is the event that is Gum Elephant Gatling. Basically, it is a 3k counter event, so it's guard point if you want to be able to use it that way. Or if you add an extra Dawn to it on your main phase, you can then... Why do I have 42... No, 2 copies. 2 copies. Let me adjust that. There we go. You guys hopefully just saw 2 copies. My original PowerPoint said 42 on accident. Anyway, if you add an extra Dawn to this, you can then rest one of your opponent's 5C or lower characters. So it's kind of a versatile event. I find that, again, you're mainly using Hody Jones, but you can sometimes use this Gum Elephant Gatling to take out important cards. I found that it can be nice to either rest blockers, or when you're facing Buggy specifically, it was really good to try to get rid of some of those important cards on the board. So, okay, next we've got Zoro. This is the secret rare Zoro, 9C Zoro. I find that he is not always going to be necessary, but in the matchups that he is basically the game-winning card. So specifically Bonnie, I found that was the best card in that matchup. Basically, what's going to end up happening in a Bonnie matchup is you're going to attack with your leader, and you're often going to run into a blocker. If you play any of your small characters, they're probably going to get rested, unless you can play more than one. So what ends up happening there is you can kind of slowly force the opponent down, but they're going to be able to kind of deal with you. However, if you play 9C Zoro, right, even if they want to rest the 9C Zoro, you just put it back active again. And you don't have to immediately use it for just the game win. You could still swing twice with Zoro, then just use his leader, or not leader ability, his normal ability for 2 Dawn, that's his, I think, activate main ability, to just make him active again when you end your turn. So basically, Zoro is going to be there to, in the Bonnie matchup, to kind of give you that momentum back that you might have been struggling with before. In other matchups, I find that he's more like a check card. And what do I mean by that? Basically, when you're playing chess, right, and you have a possible way to win, but it's not guaranteed, right? I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think, you could basically just say check. Like you're saying, hey, I'm going to kill your king next turn if you don't do something. So you play down the Zoro and you're like, hey, you got to deal with the Zoro or you lose. And so that can often be one way to manipulate your opponents into forcing their attention to the Zoro when you have other ways of dealing with them. For example, again, your leader is able to do a lot of damage. So basically, I'm not usually going to win with Zoro, but I'm often going to use him to make my opponents have to deal with him so I can win another way. Right, so he's kind of just the check card, and that's why we're running 2 copies. I do think he is really, really helpful in these kinds of matchups, but I do see some people maybe not using him. Shanks, the 9C Shanks, is also another tech card. I'm running 2 copies because he's a big body. We don't have a lot of those in this deck, except for like the Zoro, and I think Hody. You could maybe count 6C Momo, but I kind of don't. So I find that this is going to be a nice, helpful body in those situations, but it's also really the only way we're going to remove large characters. When you are facing 10C Shanks, right, a Shanks leader, and they're playing like lots of those 10C Shanks, if they are able to get multiple out, you're pretty much have lost the game. However, you can often avoid that by taking it. Next turn, play your 9C Shanks, get rid of one, and now you're kind of a little bit more in the clear. It gives you some time to wiggle things back. If you're in the Shanks matchup, they should never be getting to that point where they have multiple Shanks on the field. So this is a way to help avoid that. Now, that's the whole deck. So for some general advice, I think one big thing that has helped in so many of the matchups is to target the opponent's hand size. Like, whatever is going on with their hand, if they have a lot of cards, you will not be able to get lethal. Almost always, you are not going to be able to get lethal that way. So instead of focusing so hard on just going as much damage as I can, get all of their life out, then you're going to be stuck in a situation where they have a 20 card hand and you're still not going to be able to deal with them. So I often find that it's better, after you've gotten them down to 3 life, to start kind of focusing on making them discard. So oftentimes that means attacking 6k instead of 7k, if you know that your opponent's going to want to counter out with a 2k. You could do 7k, 5k, but if you instead do 6k, 6k, that's forcing your opponent to want to, well, not forcing, I should say manipulating your opponent into dropping to 2ks instead of taking the 7k and dropping a 1k on the 5k swing, right? So I find that it can often be helpful that way. Another thing you can do is just target the characters. A lot of times your opponents do not want to let their characters go, right? So they're going to want to discard in order to counter out. Again, you also want to go for that banish double attack when you can. Sometimes you go banish double attack even if you think your opponent is going to counter out of it to make your opponent counter out of it. Right? When your opponent is out of resources in their hand, you have won. Right? If they've got down to 1 or 2 cards in their hand, you're going to be able to get that lethal. They're usually going to be in a pretty fragile state because you've gotten them down to 1 life, maybe 2 life at most. And so now you can go for that Hody Jones play, and then boom, Yamato swing, boom, Hody swing, boom, the game is over. Right? So that's why focus a little bit more on their hand size once you get them down to 3 life. On turn 3, I've thought about doing other moves. I've tried different things. 8k leader attack is generally just the best thing you can do in this situation. Unless they have a blocker out, then there might be some other things. But generally, right, you go 8k. They're either going to take 2 damage and they're going to get all of your characters live, because from 5 life to 3 life now, boom, all your triggers work. Or they're going to discard 2 cards, like 4k counter. So that can be very helpful, again, because we are focusing on the hand, right? So it's a win-win situation either way. Usually they're going to take the 2 damage. So generally you're going to be pretty much okay to start focusing on the hand after that. But an 8k leader attack is usually just the best thing you can do on your second turn, turn 3 when you have 3 Dawn. So just go ahead and do that. And then other general advice, learn to judge when you have lethal, right? For example, Purple Luffy. You should be aware that Gum Gum Gabble, Giant, Gum Gum Giant. Sorry. I played too much Nami. Gum Gum Giant is going to make it possible for them to really survive a lot of attacks. So you kind of, in those situations, you're going to play a little bit safer. You're not going to go super in, even if you think you might have lethal. But in other situations, right, let's say you're facing, I don't know, Katakuri, right? Katakuri doesn't have a super large amount of 2k counters. So if they have maybe 5 cards in hand, and maybe they're down to 1 life or something, you should be able to start maybe swinging at that point for lethal. All right, so just learn to judge that based on which leaders you're going up against, and just generally that helps for any leader. But I find that that's especially helpful for Yamato, because if you misjudge that, it does make you punishable, right? So let's say you go for the Hody Jones play and you don't win. If you go for the Hody Jones play and you don't win, you're usually going to be down to 1 life, and your opponent can then take the game back at that point. So judging lethal, very important. Okay, so there's a couple matchups I do want to talk about just because they're popular, and they're ones I did face a decent bit when I was playing with Yamato. Buggy was one of the big ones. Early on, I actually struggled in my first game against Buggy, because if you allow them to get the 10C Buggy out, you're going to lose. Like, when they put the Buggy on the board, if they have the other 4, 5C characters, you've lost. Because at that point, you're so on the back foot that you've just completely messed this up. So instead, right, attack the characters often. Right? Even above the life, sometimes. Like, even if they're at 5 life, I will sometimes still focus on attacking the characters. Because even if we don't have our triggers, which obviously I like having the triggers, it's good, it's way more important to make sure that your opponent cannot get that Buggy out. You do not really have ways to deal with it, and it's a giant character. Usually if they get the Buggy out, they've also then got blockers, and you're really in trouble then. So attack the characters often. Resting the 4 to 5C characters, this is where Gum Gum, Elephant Gatling, where you're playing Izo sometimes. That's when things can be pretty good, because then you can just attack into that. And as always, make them discard, but it's actually super important here because Buggy needs to discard to use his leader ability. So really focus on those hand resources and those characters in the Buggy matchup. Basically, you're going to put them in a situation, if you're doing it right, where if they want to play the Buggy, it's just going to get bottom decked right afterwards. So you might lose one of your characters, but they don't get to keep the Buggy. So that's really important. Versus Teach, I found that Teach could be difficult in certain situations. Obviously, 9C Zoro is going to be useless in that situation. They're just going to play the 10C blocker Teach and just shut off his abilities, so you can't attack with him anyways. However, because Teach does have to discard to use his ability, kind of similar to the Buggy, you are able to pressure their hand a bit more. However, with the starter deck upgrades, Teach is able to cycle their characters a little bit more. For example, 6C Kuzan into 5C Kuzan into whatever other character. So I actually kind of think in Teach matchups, you don't need to focus so much on the characters. The problem with trying to focus on the characters is often they're going to get KO'd, they're going to give Teach a card to draw, and then they're just going to recycle the card some other way with Kuzan in some way there. So I find that that's generally not really the best focus. Instead, just focus on their hand and their life. A lot of times they're going to want to play the blocker Teach, but when they do, they can't really hit you very hard other than that, right? If they've got Burgess, maybe, but if you've let them get multiple Burgess out, then that's kind of your bad. I'm sorry. Like, you don't want to let them get those multiple Burgess out. Usually you would attack into those, because even though they can cycle the characters, Burgess, big threat, we don't like that. And I find that 6C Rush Momonosuke is the MVP here, because he doesn't have an on play. He is going to buff your characters, and that activate main again allows you to still attack as well. So I find Teach is a little bit tricky, but you can definitely do it as long as you are focusing on the right things. And lastly, Blue Purple Luffy. Blue Purple Luffy is one of the best decks in the game. However, he is very weak to super aggressive early gameplay. Right? Early on, for the first 2 turns, he wants to just ramp. He wants to just get up to 8 Dawn. And so we can punish him very heavily for that by just leader swing, leader swing, leader swing, leader swing. He's going to probably get down to 1 or even no life by the time he gets to 8 Dawn. He can heal a little bit with the 9 Mom. However, if we have him in this weakened position, we're going to put a lot of pressure on him to block and not take life anymore. So you can have the Katakuri come out, but let's say you swing, I don't know, 9k, right? We'll go 9k, we try to swing into him. He's going to want to block that, and he still has to drop a 2k. So you can really push a lot of pressure on the hand that way, even if they are healing a little bit with something like the 9 Mom. I find that, of course, we want to save our 5k triggers as counter. So basically, Kinemon and Nekomamushi, we want those to be counter in our hand. Obviously, Kikunojo being 6k is great. We'll just play her. And you kind of want to prioritize going for 1 more turn, staying a little bit safe over going for possible lethal. Like I said before, with any of the purple Luffys, they are very safe to counter out as long as they have Gum Gum Giant. So if the Gum Gum Giant is available, you generally don't want to risk going for the lethal unless you could really ensure that you have lethal. For example, going for like a massive overkill type thing. So I find that that tends to be the best way to handle Blue Purple Luffy, and I think I've only lost once to Blue Purple Luffy so far in my run. So yeah, he's generally very... What's the right way to say it? Not handleable. I don't know. You can handle him basically with Yamato. He's not so bad. So that's the video so far. I'm going to put a little bit of some gameplay after this. And then if you want to stick around for a bit, I'm going to give you a little update on why it's been so long since I made videos. But for those who don't care about that, thank you very much for watching. And I hope to see you again. Hopefully I will have another video quite soon. I am enjoying Purple Black Luffy. So we'll see. Anyway, hope you have a good day, good week, good life. Now, to the gameplay. Alright everybody, so we are going to be playing a game against Kobe here. Of course, as always, it's going to be 2 times speed, so we can kind of breeze through with a lot of pausing so I can explain things. So, against Kobe, I look and I see, alright, I'm going first, I like that. I want to be able to hit him fast, I want to hit him hard, standard Yamato stuff. But I look at this hand and I'm like, this hand is not it, Chief, so I want to mulligan this. Now, I'm looking for Izo, I'm looking for Yamato. And here I get Yamato and I'm like, all right, good enough. That's fine. We also have the 2 Rush Momonosuke's, which is going to be really helpful. Ashura Doji, I'm looking and I'm like, probably not going to really do much for me. And Nekomamushi also is not going to do too much for me in a Kobe matchup. With Kobe, I'm expecting that he's going to attack into my characters a lot. So I'm looking to try to get Kiku's on the board, or I'm looking for, again, the Rush Momonosuke's so that I can kind of attack pretty quickly. Yamato and Izo are generally the ones you want to get early on, especially Yamato, or sorry, especially Izo, because after you've gone for the 8k swing, if they have countered out with the cards in hand, they should be especially vulnerable to then Izo plus another 8k swing, then you're going to end up with a double attack banish. I usually am not going to play Izo when I just have like 1 extra Dawn to attack with, because a 6k Yamato swing, even if it's banished, there's no reason to not counter out of that. It's a really easy thing to counter out of. But with 8k, I'm at least taking 2 cards out of the hand, usually 2k counters. So that's the whole thought process behind getting Izo. But with this, I'm like, all right, it's good enough mulligan. I'm going to go for the Yamato. And again, we're trying to find Izo. We find Izo. It's either Izo or Nekomamushi. Nekomamushi is doing nothing in this matchup, so easy choice. I'm grabbing Izo. And then I'm going to pass turn. My opponent with 2 Dawn, I believe, goes for Peacock. Peacock is going to search out something. I think it was Prince Gruss. Now, Prince Gruss could, theoretically, could be able to stop me from blocking with Izo. However, I don't think it should ever get to that point. He can attack active characters. So if I have Izo who is able to block, he can still just attack into the Izo with almost any character. So I don't really expect that to be anything more than a 2k. And then my opponent plays, I believe, what is his name? Gripper? Ripper? Tripper? Bripper? Ripper. The black 1C, that guy. Yeah, the black 1C blocker. Now, I read his effect. I'm not super familiar with Sword. I haven't played a lot of games against Kobe, especially with Yamato. But when I look at that, I'm like, oh, yeah, that doesn't have blocker yet. He has to have a black Navy character out for, other than Ripper. Gripper? What is his name? Ripper, yes, Ripper. He has to have another blocker other than Ripper out for that to have blocker. Sorry, another navy character that has to be black colored, so Peacock doesn't count. So I'm looking at that, I'm like, cool, that's a free 8k swing, let's go. And so I'm just gonna attach all of that, and my opponent is going to counter out. Now they grab the Prince Cross, I'm guessing, so that they could counter out of this, and that they're hoping to use the Ripper next turn, maybe. But I'm just like, yeah, whenever we attack with this 8k, we want to get either the 2 cards from hand or 2 cards from life. Either way is good with us, because at this point, now my opponent's down to 4 cards, which means now I can start kind of pressuring them. Next turn, if I want to, I can go for that 8k swing. However, because he does have the blocker out, I think it's going to be unlikely. Now, here, I have Nekomamushi, so there's no reason for me not to counter, and this was actually a small misplay on my hand side. And my excuse is that I wanted to take a nap and I was kind of tired when I did this game. But I should have countered out with Nekomamushi because Ashura Doji is still viable. I could probably have played Ashura Doji next turn, maybe taken out the Ripper that way. But in my head, I'm like, right, whatever. I'm going to eventually get that damage off. And so in my head, tired brain, I was like, Ashura Doji's not really doing anything anymore. But yeah, no, I definitely should have countered out with Nekomamushi there. And he's played Kuzan, so now Ripper now has blocker. So I'm looking at that, I'm like, well, that sucks. If I had kept Nekomamushi, or sorry, if I kept Ashura Doji, this would have been the time when I could have played him, got rid of Ripper, gone for a 7k swing, and then because he only has 3 cards in hand, it's unlikely that he's going to be able to block it. However, since I did not do that, instead I'm going to have to play Izo from my hand, the 3-cost Izo. And that was kind of the punishment, I guess, for dropping the Ashura Doji. So now I'm going to go for that 7k swing. I'm hoping that he just doesn't take it or doesn't counter out, because, you know, he'd be down to like 1 card, maybe 2 cards. 2 cards, because he had 4. So then, no, 1 card, because he just drew 2, so now he's at 5. Yeah, okay. I can do math. Anyway, he has 5 cards in hand. He's taking the damage. So now all my triggers are live. I'm hoping I have some Kikonojos in life. I see I have 1 Kikonojo in my hand, so I am going to want to put her out at some point. But right there, I have a free 5k swing. Now I could swing at face, and I could bring him down 1 card. He'd be up to 4 cards in hand, down to 4 cards in hand. However, I need to get rid of that Ripper, because otherwise it's going to be able to block a leader swing or something important later. So instead I'm just going to go for the 5k swing with my Searcher Yamato on Ripper, get rid of that, and now my opponent is going to only have the Kuzan and the Peacock. Unfortunately, after they attack with the Peacock, I'm like, yeah, I could technically counter out, but there's really no reason to do that, because then he just attacks with something else. But he's going to use the Peacock, then I think he buffs Kuzan. If I remember correctly, I think he buffs Kuzan. He does, yes. So he's going to attack with Kuzan in order to allow his leader to attack into Izo. Now, I draw and I go, okay, blocker Momonosuke, so that can help me later when I get Kiku on the board, but for right now, I'm just trying to get Kiku out there. Now, looking at what my opponent has left, my opponent goes Ripper, Ripper, and I'm like, oh, crap. Well, now there's 2 blockers on the field. Annoying. If I still had that E-Zone hand, I could maybe get rid of 1, but at this point, I'm just going to go for trying to get Kiku on the board. So I'm going to go 8k. Now, either way, he's probably going to block with one of the Rippers. It just makes sense. However, there is a small chance that if I go for life, he just takes the life and then he has both Rippers later. And that's not that big of a deal, but I think that he's more likely going to protect the Kuzan. And if he, by some means, doesn't protect the Kuzan, then he's only left with the 2 Rippers, and he has not really a lot of offensive presence. So at this point, I'm going to swing the Kuzan instead of swinging the life. Now, I said all of that to be wrong. Crap. Okay, I should have swinged at the Kuzan instead. It's a very small chance. There's not a huge difference, but I should have swung at the Kuzan there. And then I play Kikunojo. Anyway. So yeah, so he blocks with Ripper either way. That's the main thing I'm expecting, but Yeah, I should have attacked Kuzan because I think that he'd be more likely to do the Ripper block. Either way, it ended up working out, but yeah, that would have been the better thought process there. Anyway, he goes Helmeppo, brings out the Kobe. Kobe's able to attack active. Kobe's going to attack into my Kikunojo. Because it's a Kobe leader, I'm expecting Kikunojo to get attacked. I would have liked if she stayed around so that I could then put her in life after swinging, but for right now, it's like, okay, I can't really expect too much more. It's not that big of a deal because I get the life back, and in a long game against a Kobe, I think I should be fine. There are some other leaders like Blue Purple Luffy and things like that that if you go long for that game, it's going to be a lot harder to win. But for someone like Kobe, I feel like it'll be fine. Kobe, especially with those secret rare Kobes, he's only going to be able to have a limited amount of those. And so I'm not too stressed about that. Mainly, I just need to keep pressure on him. Right now, he only has those 4 cards in hand, and one of them has no counter. So if I can just keep putting pressure on him, I can get him into a position where I will eventually be able to go for lethal. And so that's kind of my thought process with this. I draw into Izo. Now, right here, I'm going to attack. He's got the Ripper. Now, I'm going to attack 8k because then he has to at least block or counter 2 cards. But mainly, I want to be able to go for Momonosuke, the Rush Momonosuke, if possible. So he blocks with Ripper, and I'm like, all right, cool. Well, there we go. 10k swing at face. He's going to take it because you would have to do a lot of counter to be able to stop that. And I still have one more Rush Momonosuke in hand. So I'm feeling pretty good about this. I could have attacked into the Kuzan possibly, but at this point, it was like, all right, I'm just trying to put some pressure on the board. Now, he does have that other Kobe in hand, so I am expecting him to play that Kobe, and then probably get up to a 6k leader, maybe attack into my Momonosuke. I'm expecting Momonosuke is probably not going to survive this. But he has Rush, so that's fine. Now, he played Doll, and I'm like, oh, shoot, I forgot about Doll. Well, Doll is a blocker, and it's going to be a little annoying. So I'm going to have to find a way to deal with her at some point. I could technically play Izo, but it's all right. Anyway, I trigger Kikunojo, and I'm like, yes, we love that. We love a queen that's going to just get triggered off of life and then plop herself back on the field. However, Kuzan is making Helmeppo able to attack, so he's going to use Peacock and use everything to make sure that this hits. Now, I could counter out of this. And I think if I remember correctly, I do. Possibly. I'm hoping. Yep, okay. So the reason I counter out of that is because I want to be able to attack, put more pressure on, and if I don't have anything else, then Doll is just going to block me. There's not going to be anything else that gets done. However, if I can attack with Kikunojo, I can then play blocker Momonosuke, put Kikunojo back into the life, and then she'll be mostly safe, or at least she'll be a distraction for the next turn, so my opponent has to find a way to deal with her. Otherwise, I'm going to be able to deal with him the turn after. But anything that he's focused on that isn't my actual life means that I'm able to continue using my turns to pressure them while they have to deal with nuisances like Kikunojo and Blocker Momonosuke on the board. So I draw. I'm just going to go for a 7k swing on the Kuzan. Same reasoning as before. I want him to block. I assume he's going to block. And so attacking into the Kuzan makes the most sense. He could take the life if I didn't. So it's much better for me to attack at the Kuzan. And I believe he does, in fact, block. I think it takes a long time to think about it, but I believe he does block here. Now, I think I'm doing the same thing after I get Momonosuke on the board, right? Or no, I attack 4 into Kuzan, again, trying to get him to block, most likely with Porcelino. Most likely. And then, yeah, Momonosuke, get him up there. So, Momonosuke is going to be attacked into, I'm sure. He still has the Kuzan, so he can still attack active characters. Now, he's going for 6k swing. I don't want to take this damage yet. Not while he still has his ability to attack active characters. I want Kikunojo to get on the board once he's used that ability. So I'm assuming he's going to attack into Momonosuke. He's used Kuzan to make, who was it? Kuzan, Helmeppo can attack active, and he plays with Kobe, so then Kobe can also attack active. So he's hoping, I think, to try to get rid of Kikunojo. And it's like, all right, he gets rid of Momonosuke. It's fine. And then I believe he attacks here. Now, I couldn't have countered out of that. There was no way to do it. So Kiku dies, and now we're back to 3 life. However, he has no blockers. He has 3 cards in hand. So I can kind of figure out what I want to do here. I have Rush Momonosuke still. So what I'm going to end up doing is we're going to focus on trying to deal with Rush Momonosuke. Now, I'm attacking life first. The reason why is because if he takes it, then I can Rush Momonosuke face. And then that's going to be a lot more damage. It's definitely going to win me the game. However, I assume that he's not going to want to take it, which means he would drop 2 cards and put himself down to 1 card, which means when I play Rush Momonosuke, I'm allowed to basically kill whichever one of those 3 cards I want, which is going to be the plan. So again, I am assuming that he is not going to want to take it, and he doesn't. He drops 2 cards, and so now Rush Momonosuke, boom. Now with this, I am at 7, 8, 9, 10, 10k. So I just attached the extra Dawn, I believe. Yep. And now I can get rid of the secret rare Kobe. He can't stop that with 1 card in hand. Now he can attack into that next turn, that's fine. But at this point, we've almost won. Like I mentioned in the video, if you can get your opponent down to where they have almost no hand resources, then you've pretty much won the game. I have 3 life. My opponent is going to be distracted trying to deal with my board. And at this point, if I draw anything that rests a blocker, which I already have Elephant Gatling. I have Elephant Gatling. Most of Kobe's blockers, I think all of Kobe's blockers are able to be rested with Elephant Gatling. So as long as I have another way to attack, then he's lost. However, I'm not there yet. We still have to have another thing actually on the board to be able to deal with it. So we have almost all the pieces. My opponent's hand resources are almost gone, but I need 2 attacks. So I'm hoping that I have like another Kiku in my life. I am going to take this, of course, and I draw into Hody. Okay, GG, right? Like I said, I just needed some way to be able to attack into him, and Hody will pretty much do that and also rest any blockers he wants to play. So we're good. I think about it like he goes, okay, 7k into face, and I'm looking at his life, or his Dawn, and I'm like, okay, does Kobe have anything with Rush? Not really. Kobe doesn't usually run anything with Rush, at least that I can think of. I think the only thing he does is Helmappo to be able to rush with, gosh darn. Well, he has like pseudo rush because he can do it on characters. But he only plays Doll, and he has literally no cards in hand. So, yeah, Hody Jones. Hody motherfucking Jones. All right. And then, yep, I didn't really need to attach the 2 Dawn there. But we just do it anyway. So, that was the game. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed that. It's a pretty standard game. The only difference is that with Kobe, you're going to want to... you're going to want to be able to have those characters that can kind of attack or do something quickly. But that's kind of the way you're going to approach most games. The only difference there is you'll actually have characters that stick. So it might be a little bit easier. I don't know. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this. For those who want to hear about the update. So basically, the reason why I have not made a lot of videos since the last one I put out, which was, I think, Red, Purple, Luffy, I think so, was that I just didn't feel confident in any decks. All the ones I was playing... I was okay, but I wasn't really doing well enough, and I'm kind of wasn't feeling confident in myself as a player at the time, so it felt like there's nothing for me to really say. You know, if I don't feel comfortable with a deck, if I don't feel like I have a good win rate with the deck, at least good enough to feel like I can tell you about it, then it just seemed like it was kind of pointless for me to make videos about stuff, because I don't want to waste your time, I don't want to waste my time, and ultimately, I want to be able to provide some sort of knowledge. So eventually what I ended up deciding is, okay, I am going to play a deck, make sure I feel kind of comfortable with it, and then I'll start like writing down my games and try to make sure I have a good win rate. If I have a decent enough win rate, which I think Yamato, I'm going to check what Yamato is, but it's in the 60s. I believe then it's like, okay, I'm doing well enough with this deck that I can teach it, I feel like I'm at least able to provide some sort of value out of that. And so I feel like it's okay to make a video. Oh no, I'm up to 70% with that. Yay, cool. Anyway, so I played 30 games, wrote it down, and then 70% win rate, very cool. So I feel like talking about that is fine. The other thing I wanted to change is kind of the style a little bit. I had already changed the editing style in the last meta a little. You might have noticed it with the Red Purple Luffy video, and you'll have noticed it in this one, having the cards kind of move around, do things like that. But I still takes me kind of a while to sit down and write a script and everything. However, for those who don't know, my day job is being an English teacher. I don't know if you could tell because my English is not always that good. But I decided, all right, instead of writing out full scripts, I'm just going to make some slides and we're just going to have a quick teaching lesson, right? I'm going to kind of wing it. So that's kind of what happened with this. And I was able to get everything ready for this Yamato video within about 2 days. So hopefully I should be able to make more content going forward. I just have to actually feel very comfortable with the deck to actually do that. So far, I am playing a little bit with Purple Black Luffy. I am still in the testing phases of trying to figure out what I actually want it to have, but things are looking pretty good right now. So once I start kind of writing down my games, seeing how that looks, and as long as the win rate and everything is good and I feel comfortable, then yeah, we'll probably talk a little bit more about that in the near future. There are a lot of decks that I want to continue to play because the starter decks are bringing a lot of fun upgrades to decks that I really enjoy. Purple Black Luffy is one I was trying to figure out, like 3 months ago, 2 months ago, something like that. Someone left a comment on one of my videos asking me to do Purple Black Luffy, and I tried, and I couldn't figure it out to make him work. So I was like, okay, I guess I'm scrapping that. But there are so many decks that I want to build, and so the problem is not, the problem is no longer how long it takes for me to make videos. The problem is only going to be my skill level. So I hope you guys will hang out with me, enjoy some of the videos, and let's get some good content going. All right. With all that being said, my name is Waffles the Asian Yen Bear, and this has been GY Yamato. That's Green Yellow Yamato. Anyway, have a good day, good week, good life. Goodbye. And if I catch any of you fuckers calling Yamato a she, I'm gonna ban you immediately.